right, so I think we have a good number right now, so we'll go ahead and get started just to keep everyone on schedule. So first of all, welcome everybody. We're really excited to be a part of this Members in Transition series. My name is Sarah Derdowski. I'm the Executive Director for the Global Energy Management Program. So I was proud to put together this panel of speakers for you today and hopefully provide some real practical skills and some takeaways for folks as they listen through excuse me, the program. So just as you know who we are and why we are supporting members in transition. So we run the Global Energy Management Program, which is a business and leadership program for the energy industries, all energies, which is really important for us. And we provide master's level, professional ed, and public education around the energy space. Ranked third in the nation by Heart Publications, so really proud of that ranking and all of our alumni who have helped us make that. But more than that, we're really focused on the workforce and energy specifically. So we want to help people have long careers in energy, help provide the education and training portions where we can, and then provide resources such as these fantastic panelists here today that can kind of help give you that real world perspective. So that's really why we're a part of this Members in Transition. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about kind of the Global Energy Management Program in general. So it's a little bit about me and why we're, as an energy management program, are interested in this type of panel. The other piece I would like to just take a moment is a safety moment for all of you who are in the energy industry. We always start our meetings with a safety moment and just really, thank everyone for being on a Zoom call today, being virtual. I think it's so important. I know we're all tired of Zoom, but I appreciate everybody taking care of themselves and their family and very much looking forward to getting back to work. So continue to take care of each other in the next few months as we hopefully come back to normal. So that's our safety moment. So now we can actually progress to the meat of what we're supposed to do today. And that is, we have the title Decarbonizing Our Energy Workforce. And so that's really what we want to talk about here today. And some of the goals that we really want to get out of this is that we essentially, I want you to talk to some folks who are on the front lines, talk to real people who have made shifts, talk to folks at companies who are actually looking to hire, who enjoy having folks from an oil and gas background come over to them, and then talk about some key skills and some practical pieces that you can do to kind of help retool, position yourself to get within those industries. So hopefully that's why you're all here today. And hopefully we'll be able to answer some specific questions for you about that. So real quickly before I introduce my panelists who are so patiently waiting, so thank you very much, is just a couple comments. What we'd like to do is have Q&A during the session. So I obviously have some pieces to guide our discussion, but would really love it if you guys use the Q&A function and type in questions as they kind of come up so we can answer them in a timely fashion. I will save just a couple minutes at the end in case we didn't get to anything or there's a topic that we didn't cover, we can get that question answered. Otherwise, I'd like to kind of have a great conversational flow to what we're doing today. And then also, I do have a poll to get us started as well, because I think our panelists are also curious as to how many folks are actually looking to make a transition and in what way they're doing that. So I'm going to throw up that poll just quickly so people can see if you have time to kind of click through that. Just curious, are you actively looking to shift into a new role, or kind of where are you on that mentally as well? So thanks for going through and answering that. While we have that poll in progress to get some massive numbers in there, I'd like to just do a quick intro of our panelists to get going. So, and then I'll have themselves introduce themselves a little bit more with some more context before we kind of get into questions. So first, welcome Adam Irwin. He's Clean Tech Manager at SHNEIDER ELECTRIC. Adam has had a over decade experience, I think, in the clean tech space now, looking from sustainability, kind of working the operator side, and now over at SHNEIDER ELECTRIC. I believe you've been there since 2006. So excited to have Adam on the call. And he also sits on our Global Energy Management Advisory Board. So just a quick shout out. So thanks for your service on that, Adam. We appreciate it. We also have Lee Morrison. So Lee's Director of Development over at AMP Energy. So kind of an up and growing battery storage company. So really excited to have Lee on board to talk about some of the things they're working on. And then again, excited to have him as one of our alumni of the GEM program. So thanks, Lee, for all the pieces you do. And then we have Mitchell Williams. So Mitchell Williams, new to AES, so really excited. to have him on the call. He's over on the East Coast for us today. So thanks for making a late lunchtime for us. Mitch has a great background of a lot of you. He's a geologist by training. He has his MBA from Harvard, and he's moved into the kind of clean energy arena and stuff as well, and he's made the big kind of jump from geologist into kind of this clean tech space. And then Kaylee Van Cleve, Iridium Consulting, just a great supporter of the energy industry in general. So she does recruitment and some executive coaching for folks in the industry. She's helped people make mini shifts and kind of walked them through that. And yeah, she's here to kind of give us our perspective kind of on the trends of what's happening in the space as well. So delighted to have you all here. Looks like we have at least a good mass. It looks like for the most part, a lot of people are kind of actively searching, which is great. Some folks are kind of casually looking here or there. So hopefully we can answer some questions kind of for that mass group. And I certainly understand the ones who are hoping to not have to. So there is certainly a lot of innovation that's happening. So hopefully you don't have to do that. So let me just end that poll. Thanks, everybody. Everybody can see that, kind of where everybody is. So great. I'm going to stop sharing there. Great. And then just to kind of get us kicked off, I certainly want all of you to introduce yourselves, so I'll position that. But one of the things I read recently in the Houston Chronicle, they were talking about, we talk about, oil and gas jobs being eliminated, the whole sector of the energy space being eliminated. And, really them coming back and saying, it's not about eliminating jobs in oil and gas. It's kind of about reimagining what energy jobs look like. And, I couldn't agree with that more. And I thought that was a great kind of segue into our panel and kind of what we're going to talk about today, is that it's not about getting rid of people in an industry or completely eliminating their skill sets. It's about how we reimagine that and reposition folks within the industry. So with that, I'd like to kind of get us kicked off. And if you could, we'll kind of go around and just for manners wise, Kaylee, we'll have you go first. And let's talk about just a little bit more of your background and then kind of what you're seeing in the transition space and kind of how you've done that. So Kaylee, if you don't mind kind of kicking us off.
Yeah, not a problem. And like Sarah said, definitely we are open to questions throughout this whole conversation. It's definitely going to be more dialogue driven. So my background, I actually had a oil and gas based experience. Most of my last 15 years in the hiring space has been directly tied to energy in particular, and heavily on the oil and gas side, especially when I first started my career. So I also shifted and did a transition personally and professionally with our organization over the course of the last 3 years to really be more all-inclusive and work across the full spectrum of energy. So in a lot of ways, I similarly had a personal transition and a company transition during that same period of time. So we actually work directly with individuals, helping them identify what can be a transition path into a new kind of re-envisioned or reimagined role within the space, as well as helping companies identify how to bring in the best top talent. And a lot of times that means looking outside of what would be considered kind of traditional career paths, since career paths really aren't very linear anymore. They're kind of a little bit more wobbly, a little bit more indirect in nature. So definitely common conversations that we have on a daily basis, both with companies, hiring managers, and with individuals.
Thanks, Kaylee. I wonder, Mitchell, if you might go next and kind of talk about a little bit of your background and kind of that little bit of the path of transition or how you kind of relate to transition right now.
Yeah. I think that point you just made, Kaylee, was really funny because I'll give you the linear version right now, but it's not. No transition is beautiful, right? And we kind of bounce all over the place. So I started my career in oil and gas, like you said, Sarah, as a petroleum geologist, drilling oil wells, South Texas, Gulf of Mexico. Love the day-to-day work, but kind of always had my eyes set on the clean energy space. I got the opportunity to work on some software product development related to horizontal drilling, and found that I really enjoyed that sort of having a customer focus, building something for a customer, And I used that as an opportunity to go back to business school and try to make that transition both to clean energy and to having more of a customer focus. I worked for a developer, a solar and wind developer during the summer while I was in school. Basically just said, I want to make this transition. You know, I don't know much, but I'll work hard, and was able to go do some work for the developer, Long Road Energy, for that summer. Worked a couple of energy at a couple of energy startups post school because I wasn't quite ready to do the developer. There wasn't quite the right role for me in the developer space personally. So worked with a couple startups, one that I founded and then subsequently closed, and then a company called QuidNet Energy, which is a long duration energy storage solution backed by Breakthrough Energy Ventures and some other people. There I worked on some product development type work that kind of had an overlap with the product development work I'd done previously. And that's really when my story came together. It took a couple years for my story to come together. I'm really interested in this product development space. And that's where I've ended up at AES. I've joined the clean energy product development team to focus on ideating, growing, and commercializing new energy products. And so, transitions can be difficult, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can. I'm glad to be here.
Great, thanks so much, Mitch. And then Adam, I wonder if you would kind of go next.
Yeah, sure thing. So I guess my personal linkages to the oil and gas industry are maybe not directly in my own career so much as in my family more broadly, having grown up in central Kansas, small town America, where the two primary employers were agriculture and the oil and gas industry. My father worked 25 years for Koch Industries, and spoke with him on the phone last night, and he's in northern Minnesota working on a new pipeline expansion, coming down out of Canada right now. So I told him about the wind farms in Texas I was advising my clients on. We had a really nice conversation about how the weather in Denver was a little bit better than it was in northern Minnesota right now. But yeah, I think to build on what Kaylee and Mitch were sharing, I went through my own career transition after coming out of school about 12 or 13 years ago. During the financial recession, was kind of at a point where I was ready to make a transition in my career, and the financial recession helped me in accelerating that process. I'll just put it that way. And so what I learned in my transition, initially, maybe similar to Mitch, coming out of school, working with a renewable energy developer, was that because of where I grew up and the experiences I had, in addition to my education, I had a tremendous number of transferable skills, despite at that point in my life never having worked in the renewable energy or sustainability space. In terms of my understanding of finance, my ability to talk to landowners and county officials, and piece together a wind farm in western Kansas or southeast Nebraska. And from there, just like any other transition, you just sequentially build on your knowledge and your capabilities over time. And so I bring up some of these examples early on because I saw the first question in the Q&A section, which was, do I need renewable energy experience to be able to work in the renewable energy space? And the answer is, it certainly doesn't hurt to have that, but the answer is no. And if you did, then it would be a very small industry very quickly, because it was, in many respects, the renewable energy industry was built by people that came out of oil and gas and came out of the physical sciences that had been supporting oil and gas, similar to Mitch's experience. And just there's a long track record of individuals having tremendous success transferring from oil and gas or more carbon intensive sectors of our energy space into renewable energy or into lower carbon careers that otherwise didn't go to school with the intent of becoming a renewable energy specialist or so maybe I'll just kind of leave it there, but that's kind of where my career trajectory has taken me as a younger man coming out of school. The financial recession allowed me an opportunity to pursue some intellectual interests and passions in wind energy. And from there, it led to time with DirecTV and AT&T on their corporate energy procurement and risk management teams, where we were actively working to decarbonize operations inside large, Fortune 500 companies. And now I found myself with Schneider Electric as an energy consultant and advisor, primarily in the renewable space, helping Fortune 1000 companies decarbonize their operations and supply chains.
That's great, Adam. And it does matter that you kind of have a pulse on what's going on in the oil and gas side as well, and personal connections too. So, well, Lee, why don't you wrap us up on intros and kind of your experience with the transition? I know you've had quite a few transitions, so hopefully you can help speak to that a little bit, and then we'll get to some trends in the hows for folks.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I've had a number of transitions from going all the way back to the beginning of my working life after undergraduate, when I graduated from college. That was largely by design, but like Mitch said, sometimes it's ugly, and like Adam said, sometimes it's forced. And so I've learned a lot of lessons along the way and how to do it as smoothly as possible. At one point, I did land in oil and gas, like everybody else here on the panel, and I spent a number of years in oil and gas doing field land work, and then moved into a corporate environment doing landman work. From there, I started to move into more of land planning and land development work. And that's what really kind of gave me the fundamentals that I needed to get launched into renewables. And again, that was just kind of like being in the right place at the right time with the right skill set. It got me into solar and storage development. And that's where I am today, still running a pretty sizable portfolio of community solar and battery storage projects, primarily in the northeastern US. What I've learned in looking back is that it takes somebody who's committed to a life of learning to really kind of be successful at these kinds of transitions. It takes somebody who is paying attention. So the advice that I would give is to pay attention to your current employer or to your former employer. Understand their org chart, understand how finance ties into their decision making, those sorts of things. And then don't pigeonhole yourself. It's like, don't see yourself as a landman. Understand what you do and what skills that you're gaining or that are transferable. As like Adam said, there are very few experts in renewables. It's just too new of an industry. There's certainly not nearly enough experts. And so we've got to find people who are super smart and have a good fundamental transferable skill set. And those are the ones who move on in this industry.
And those are really good points. And we'll kind of dig into some of those hows and stuff a little bit later. But just for everybody's knowledge and kind of let's move into some trends you guys can kind of see. And I know Kaylee's going to talk about those, but just in general, so people understand how big the whole economy is shifting and changing. As energy specifically is a big piece of that. Is World Economic Forum put out there's going to be 133 million new roles by 2022. That's new roles. And that's because of technology growth. And so think about that and how that's going to play an effect on your career, and then specifically within the energy space, what that means. That means all sectors are shifting and changing, but energy is having a big shift and change specifically. So think about that. But Kaylee, I'd love it if you could kind of chat with us a little bit, kind of trends you're seeing kind of from the recruitment perspective when it comes to energy jobs. You spoke to a little bit about it, but maybe more specifically.
Absolutely. I think we're at an interesting time where all of us here get to be part of the remapping of how, new roles, what they're going to look like, the new technology that's coming in. I mean, changes in battery storage are insane right now, trying to keep abreast of all of that. There's a lot of really big, heavy lift transitions that are happening that are going to be like super tough, right? They're going to be difficult. They're going to be hairy messes to kind of work through. And with hairy, audacious kind of big projects comes a great opportunity for these transition kind of jobs to appear and emerge. So while we have seen in the last couple of years, oil and gas industry definitely has been hit hard. I mean, we historically have been very cyclical, but we are very much a legacy industry. So even in those cyclical kind of aspects, the new job creation that comes out of it tends to be very it tends to be common, right? It's things that we've seen before. It's project-driven based work, things along those lines. And so in the last couple of years, we've seen a downtick, right? There's been substantial layoffs, and we felt those, personally, professionally, friends, coworkers, things along those lines within our teams and our organizations. But what's really interesting is that tide has kind of shifted, I think, in my opinion, based off of the what data is coming out now. The growth in our industry is picking back up, especially on if we're looking full scope energy at large. There's definite growth. We're going to see brand new projects coming online. I mean, Excel is bringing new stuff on, and we're seeing new job postings. Just our organization alone, between last year and this year, the job openings that we have are up 30%. Now, I mean, last year was definitely a unique year with compounding items with COVID, and also with the industry at large with oil and gas and stuff, kind of the trickle down effect of that. But that is very hopeful. And so we're seeing a lot more activity. We're seeing companies putting a little bit more emphasis on truly hiring for skills, passion, curiosity, adaptability. Those types of things are things that we're hearing from our clients that are fundamental in making their hiring decisions, which allows there to be a little bit more room and space for those individuals who come from different backgrounds. And like mentioned before, the newness of the kind of decarbonized space is also a benefit. I mean, that you can bring a lot of the intel that you had from oil and gas or other more carbon driven industries into the new space and help everyone kind of grow and learn. So we're definitely seeing that. There's some really great energy reports. So the US 2020 Energy and Employment report is a great thing to kind of take a look at if you have a few moments on that. There's some great data points, both domestically, what we're seeing, and also you can get pretty granular on that, like each state. So look at what your home state's looking like. So here in Colorado, we're seeing growth in the electric power generation side of 7-8%. We're seeing energy efficiency is a huge thing, 4% on that. We're seeing storage, transmission, distribution projects, all of that's growing around about 4.8% here in Colorado. So we're actually growing faster than the national average here in the States. There's a lot of opportunity here in Colorado as well as nationwide. So definitely check out some of those reports and some of the statistics and things like that if you like to nerd out on the people front like I do.
No, that's great, Kaylee. And we know there's a lot of jobs and roles coming up, so just helping people make those transitions into those. So I think the biggest thing that people are curious and want to focus on are the hows. So it's out there, there's possibilities. We've talked about it. We've seen Mitch, you've made a transition. I know some of the folks on the calls that have made transitions, Leah, you have as well. So let's talk a little bit about how we actually do that. So let's talk about what it means to kind of rebrand yourself. So Leah, I wonder if you won't speak to that a little bit, since you've gone through the rebranding process more than a couple times. And then I want to talk about kind of from the hiring and kind of interviewing perspective, what it's like what you would look for specifically in a candidate so that people feel like they could get past maybe a round one.
Sure. So I can give some more specific examples from a land perspective, and then some others that I don't have direct experience with, but I have seen other people, and that includes what I'm looking for when I'm hiring. So I didn't really specifically see myself as a landman. I saw myself more as a PR member of the organization. I was out representing the company to the community and to the regulators and to landowners. I was a land developer. I wasn't necessarily out trying to lock down leases or surface pads for oil and gas wells or pipelines or whatever it was. I was, think of yourself as a land developer from that kind of perspective. And then you take some of those anchor positions, I guess, and then expand on them. It's like, what other skills am I doing that I don't even realize are transferable to other industries? I still see it every day. I see a variety of ads for open positions that I think might be a good match for a variety of people in oil and gas. So one that comes to mind is financial modeling. There's a tremendous amount of discussion in that. Of course, renewables, like every other industry, are driven by financial models. So it's anybody out there that's got modeling experience. So I think of petroleum reservoir engineers that have a lot of modeling experience. Of course, obviously, finance and accounting people from oil and gas have it. We're also looking for people with project management. That's a huge need in our industry. So engineers that might have been involved in big infrastructure projects, whether they're pipelines or developing a big oil and gas field or those sorts of things. So I try not to put myself in the position of what I'm trying to say is try not to be a landman, try to be, phrase what you have done, what you have accomplished, rather than the title that is tagged next to your name.
Yeah, that's great, Lee. And I know, curious, Mitch, kind of from your perspective too, how maybe you did that and how you presented yourself.
Yeah, I have a few different thoughts. I do want to touch on what Kaylee was saying about sort of bigger trends. One of the trends that has sort of, like, when I came out of school the first time versus when I came out of business school is just in technology and skill building. It is so easy to build skills these days online. Like I just started this new job, 4 days ago, and the first thing they had me do was take this like 5-hour online course. It's like, but I mean, there's just so much available to do, and financial modeling. I learned more about financial modeling online after, don't tell my HBS professors this, online after going to business school, like really digging into it myself, than I did during business school, because there's just so much other stuff going on. But so I think that and to, I think it was Lee's point about sort of being a lifelong learner, going out, and you don't have to build, become the perfect financial modeler, but showing that you can build skills, I think, is something that makes you attractive. And just to echo what Lee was saying, so as I was just, going through my transition, one of the things I was also considering developer roles. And so one of the things I was highlighting was, in my oil and gas experience, coordinating with land on the ground and the engineering team and finance. That's, you're coordinating, different activities, but similar activities, and those sort of project management type skills are so transferable if you just, tell the right story. So I think that's really important too. And then, just finding that overlap. And if the overlap doesn't exist yet, then you can go out and figure out ways to create overlap, whether it's within your company or, working on a little side consulting project. That was I had to do some of that. And that ended up ultimately being what got me into the position that I'm in now. And I guess that sort of highlights that for me, I couldn't make the transition from, I was trying to switch industries and functions at the same time, which is a pretty difficult thing to do. And so what I had to do was accept the fact that I couldn't just jump into this perfect dream job straight from being a geologist. I had to take a couple transitional opportunities. And I think that once I accepted the fact that I was gonna, have to, it would truly be a transition, not a jump. That made it a lot easier, and I learned a lot more because I just, kind of approached it with more of an open mind.
No, but you made a couple really good points that I really want us to cover. It goes back to that zigzag stuff that Kaylee brought up at the beginning, and that, it is a transition, and with that, it's a completely different industry, right? It's completely different, and it's not always upward progression, like it really isn't a lot of places, right? You have to move laterally to then be able to move up to the next piece of it. It's the same thing here. So I think it's also going to bring up some of the pieces, Adam, as you kind of talk about from a hiring manager's perspective. Some of the things you've seen is is knowing what those roles are and are called, because it's very different in clean tech and in the utility space what the job titles are, even to really even know where to start asking questions or meeting folks in those roles to see if you're even qualified, because the titles and can be very different. So Adam, if you don't mind kind of talking from your perspective a little bit, kind of what you look for in hiring somebody, and then maybe you could speak to some of the roles and stuff in clean tech as well.
Yeah, happy to, Sarah. And you're right. I'll maybe hit on one point and then come back to your second question. That is, the nomenclature or the vernacular of an industry it's important to learn. I think that's a great way. Lee mentioned this. I think Mitch alluded to it. The idea that you have to be curious and be interested in that industry, and a great way to build on that curiosity is through the news feeds you get on a daily basis, and even more importantly, it's the network of professional acquaintances and folks that you build over time. The combination of those two things are going to provide you formal and informal resources that allow you to build knowledge in an industry without even being a part of it yet necessarily. So similar to the way I probably couldn't transition tomorrow into oil and gas and really know the terminology and speak in what I would feel would be an educated way to somebody working in the oil and gas space about geology or pipeline development and those types of things. The way I would approach that would be to turn this webinar on its head and start reaching out to everybody else on the other side, who would then be the panelists, and say, hey, would you take 30 minutes and help me better understand? I have some real interest here. Here's what I know. Here's what I don't know. Here's where my interests are. What would you do if you were me? And just kind of be honest, be vulnerable a little bit in terms of making yourself open to learning, flexible to learning, and willing to reach out and ask that assistance of other people. One thing I learned in my career transition earlier is being curious and making yourself a little bit vulnerable, even to the extent of feeling a little awkward at times because you feel like you're talking to somebody who's so much smarter than you, and the thing that you want to be doing can take your career to new heights and open new doors that you may never have even known existed, because that person may see something in you that you didn't even see in yourself. And then that's where you start to connect all the dots. And maybe that's a good segue, Sarah, into having hired, having had to backfill 30% of my team who moved to great other opportunities within the company recently. So I've been in hiring mode for 4.5 months now. So it's very fresh in my mind. And really, I think I'll just echo a lot of what's been shared here already. Three of the things I look for. Well, certainly, it's always great if you have some electricity, or some kind of energy industry experience. But there's so many other industries that can facilitate the things that are happening in renewables and in clean tech and in lower carbon technologies and all the other industries that directly and indirectly support them. Three things I really specifically look for are what I consider more of the intangibles. It's not, can you speak the language with the same fluency I can, but it's, do you have good communication skills? Are you able to relate to potentially me as your supervisor, to your coworkers? And, because we work in a client-facing organization as advisors and consultants, can you relate to lots of different individuals of different backgrounds, in different time zones, in different countries around the world with different cultural backgrounds? And, how do you behave in that setting where you need to be able to communicate and relate to someone is an incredibly powerful and I think undervalued at times transferable skill. Another one, Lee mentioned this specifically, is project management. I think there's continuity there across so many different industries, especially in infrastructure generally, whether it's oil and gas or electricity or renewables or natural gas generation, whatever it is. Just the ability to take complex engagements, bring a team of people together, not all of whom think or look or talk alike, and get them to the conclusion that leads to the right outcome for the people involved. It's just that those project management skills, whether they're formally learned in a more academic, PMP kind of setting, or if it's something you learn on the job over 2 years, 5 years, 20 years of a career, knowing how to matrix manage and bring different teams together, people who don't even report to you necessarily, to manage up and down your management chain at the same time to bring results is another incredibly powerful skill that I look for. And the last one, I think it's the one maybe I led off with, is just that curiosity and that passion to be vulnerable and to learn every day. You know, I'm jealous of Lee because he works in the energy storage space. I'm more traditionally on the generation side of advisory, and now I'm really having to learn for the first time. Like, wow, what if we store it after we generate it and don't immediately consume that electricity? And that's honestly an area I'm not as nearly skilled or knowledgeable as I should be to be advising my clients as well as I should. And so just remaining curious and passionate and constantly learning and admitting and sharing your vulnerabilities as a way to do that, I think is three things that have helped me tremendously in my career as I've seen different transitions. And as I've seen other people make their transitions, and as I've been a hiring manager now for the past year and a half, those are really some of the things I look for.
I would love to add a bit on there. So as you were running through sort of those three different skills, what I was thinking was, okay, if I was out there trying to get a job now, what I would do is build my resume to highlight exactly what you just described. So make sure I call out exactly how where my project management skills are, and like I'm just thinking about how I changed my resume a lot between the developer roles that I was applying to and then the product development. Project versus product development, two completely different things. I had two completely different resumes for. And then to your point about curiosity and reaching out to people, that was such an important part of my transition. So I just want to highlight kind of the way I thought about that. I could not pick up the phone and call someone 5 years ago, and it just wasn't in my DNA or whatever. I think someone was highlighting fear of sounding silly or sounding like you don't know or anything, whatever that fear is that we have. So a couple things that really helped me were somebody told me to have like an elevator pitch for myself, that who you are, why you're reaching out, and what your ask is. And so I started using that, like a very short version for email, LinkedIn, or literally, if you're at a conference and you meet somebody, and just describing those three things, and then asking for, hey, can I get 30 minutes on your calendar? I'd love to pick your brain. And then the next step is, okay, I've got this call coming up. What do I do? So my confidence completely changed when I started just writing it. I had to write a script for myself because I was like, I'm going to get on this call and sound stupid unless I literally read what I want to say. So I just thought, if somebody asked me, tell me about yourself. And I wrote like a half page response. And that actually really helped me a lot. And then obviously, have some questions in mind, and then have some ask in mind, whether it's, I'd love to be introduced to somebody, or, is your company hiring for anything that sounds remotely familiar to what we've just, I've just described about myself. And then also, I think it's important to offer the other person something, whether it's like, hey, next time you're in Denver, this is my favorite Mexican restaurant, to connecting them with someone or something a little more serious. So I think those are really important. And then just in terms of mindset, I was always worried about embarrassing myself. I had an interview actually a year ago, or sometime last year, where somebody asked me, this is I had not put a new script together for myself, and they asked me to tell them about me, and it was a 30-minute interview, and I spent 29 minutes answering that question. And that is the worst thing that can happen. But I was definitely told no thank you, and then I moved on with my life. And so the worst thing that can happen is not that bad. And once you realize that, I think things get a lot easier. And one more thing, when you're making this transition, you're in an amazing position because you're not you're expected to know nothing. So you can ask people, anybody. And by the way, and I totally did this, I acted like the person I was talking to was the first person in the industry that I had ever talked to several times. So you can just like, work on repetition, and you hear the same thing a few times and you start to get smarter. And so it's so I'm very passionate about getting on the phone with people and just being vulnerable, like someone said.
And Mitch, for what it's worth, I still have on a hard drive somewhere, probably a couple dozen scripts I use for career interviews and for career networking, especially when making that transition, just to kind of help level set. And again, can't reiterate that networking point enough. Again, if the worst outcome is the call goes poorly, then what was a 30 to 60 minute investment of your time versus, if that call goes well, or you get another connection out of it, the return on investment for picking up the phone and talking to people is just tremendous.
Tagging onto that, I've in my history, I've done a lot of research online, which is quite easy now. I mean, you can find all kinds of stuff on YouTube that will teach you some fundamentals about our industry. You can find all sorts of things, job ads on LinkedIn and Indeed, wherever you might look, that will give you tremendous insights into the different jobs that are available or different positions. You can even Google different companies' org charts to learn how they're set up and what the different roles are available. And so it's always important to me to find those people who have kind of that fundamental understanding of the industry. Even I would even call it the most fundamental understanding, because the rest is going to be trainable, and there just aren't that many people out there that come ready equipped to jump in. So when I'm interviewing people, I'm looking for like I said before, the really super smart, the lifelong learners, the people who have actually made those steps. So if you want to learn more about the grid, which I highly recommend, go out and read that book that came out a few years ago called The Grid. You're going to learn a whole lot about power generation in that. Go write your own white paper, and you'll learn a lot. But then when you get to the interview, be natural, show that you're collaborative, show that you are humble, that you're going to get along with people, that you're going to be very collegial, that you take initiative. Those are the real soft skills that people are really looking for. At least I'm really looking for that kind of stuff when I'm chatting with people. I also, I think is important, work on your debate skills. Because if you're in oil and gas, you probably have had plenty of opportunities to get into hot debates with other people on your own team. Well, that's not going to change in renewables. And so you're going to be sitting around a boardroom and you're going to be yelling at each other, and everybody's going to be very opinionated, and you got to be able to stand your ground. And similarly, if you're in front of a planning board or a county commission, same thing. You've got to make your argument concisely, and you've got to make it clearly and come out of there with a victory. So that's another one that I would recommend.
Just to kind of tag off of what Lee and Mitch and Adam and everybody have been kind of talking around, and pulling it back to kind of pragmatic, useful items in your interview process. I think one of the big hangups people get in the middle of a transition is they don't actually create or identify those narratives or those stories that might actually show or demonstrate those project management skills, those engineering skills, those understanding of financial management or project finance understanding or data capabilities. So when you kind of re-look at your experience and do a quote unquote audit on what you've done to date, and not with like the frame, like Lee said, like I as a landman, but I as a contract negotiator or, project developer or, team lead in an organization, this is what I've done. Make sure you put together a whole list of these kinds of stories that you can draw on. So that way, when you're in these conversations, like Mitch is saying, that you're out there networking with, those are really golden moments for you guys to have connection and have that natural discussion and highlight those, those moments where you did adapt or you did try new things, because everything you've done to date has been new to you throughout the whole experience of your career. And so this is no different. You're just putting a different lens on it a little bit. So maybe back the pressure out just a little and focus in on some of those critical core stories that you can bring to the table.
And those are really good suggestions, everybody. And certainly, I think people are, curious of how you do that. We talk about some of our questions about you put certifications versus experience when hiring, which is better, and I guess, to answer that, I'd love to kind of hear, you talked a little bit about, hey, let's make a project management specific piece of it. But, how to highlight that it's not just something I did, and that whole branding purpose of it as well, including in some of their social presence. Any thoughts or ideas on that, how they might actually kind of turn the brand around a little bit?
To jump in real quick, one of the big ways to do is make sure that if you are telling a story or you have on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile the name of the company, you have to remember you're coming from a different industry. They might not know who that company is. So make sure you provide some context on that. Is that a oil and gas developer? Is that somebody within the environmental engineering space? Give some context before you simply just put the job duties or your project management skills in there, and then tell the full story. So I think a lot of times we just simply regurgitate what our job description was. That's not really helpful. You need to connect the dots. So what was the value add or the impact that you had for that organization within that role during that time and place and time in that company's transition themselves, their growth cycle, their decline, whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, those are great. And one thing I wanted to just say real quick is it's not something that we're looking to expunge your experience in oil and gas, because I think that's certainly not it. But I think it's highlighting specifically how you're an energy professional and what skill sets transfer. I think that's what we're trying to do. So I want to be really clear that it's not trying to eliminate your experience or saying that it's not valid, because it absolutely is valid and needs to be highlighted in some ways, but it's how you're highlighting it, I think is where we're putting the emphasis that makes the biggest difference, right? So I think that's key there. Sorry, Mitch, did I cut you off there?
Oh, just one small, very specific thing. The way that I found most useful to be a storyteller was this STAR: situation, task, action, result, and that was like I had in my head I had 5 bullet points that each one was like a story, and then I had the star for that story, and yeah, that was super useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's perfect. I see Kaylee applauding, so obviously this is something she encourages everybody to do. And then kind of one thing I did want to maybe dispel a couple myths and stuff too for folks, since we have a larger oil and gas audience and stuff here too, is, what has your experience been either being hired or as a hiring manager as you see oil and gas experience come through? Do you see that as valuable? Do you see it, not as valuable? Just in general, kind of, and the same thing with age. I think we had a question on age, so obviously don't want to, put anybody on the spot, but do you see that as a benefit to hiring somebody in who has some more senior experience, or you prefer to hire some younger folks?
I can speak to both of those. I think being a person who's made these transitions at an older age and at a younger age, I guess, I don't assign much weight to that at all, or any weight to that at all. It's like I want the people who have the experience and have the ability to grow with the company, and it doesn't really matter to me what their age might be. And then as far as your first question about oil and gas is, I love to see oil and gas people come through when we're recruiting, because I know they are used to long cycle CapEx infrastructure projects, repeatable, and it's very similar to what we do. I also know that oil and gas is a 100-year-old multi-trillion-dollar industry. They're going to bring with them all of their ideas on the best way to set up companies and the best way to run these types of organizations, because I believe our business models are quite compatible. And so I like that. I like that I know that as somebody coming out of oil and gas is going to understand collaboration and working across a lot of different disciplines and bringing lots of people into different team meetings and so forth. So yeah, that's outstanding. And then I would answer Carson Brown's question about the PMP. absolutely, I zero right in on that when I see a resume. But if you don't have a PMP, highlight your project management experience anyway, because that is not necessarily going to kick you out of the hiring pool. So but if you've got it, or if it's within grasp, absolutely go get that PMP and put it next to your name.
That's great. Thanks so much, Lee. And then curious, I wonder if you can speak to, I saw Heidi's question down there below, and Mitch, and I guess Lee, maybe your experiences too. How much did higher ed, was that kind of an expectation for you kind of making a transition? Mitch, I know for you, I know you went back to business school to kind of do that, maybe speaking to that. Was that a big piece for you to kind of make, or maybe additional education in general? Was that a big piece for you to make the transition, or an expectation as you were looking for new roles? They expected maybe more education?
I think that it wasn't necessarily an expectation, but it gave me a stronger platform to tell my story on. And I also, you know, I was a technical person, and I don't know that I really had the business knowledge at the time, at least, to make the transition. Then I didn't take, you know, I chose to take that route rather than, you know, doing online skill building. But I wouldn't say that it's an expectation at all, but I will say that it's pretty difficult to I'm not sure I can imagine just quitting my job and like going and getting an internship in renewables, you know, like quitting my very well paying oil and gas job. So it gave me that sort of reset button to make the transition, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and Sarah, for me, I had absolutely no intention when I went into the GEM program. I had absolutely no intention of transitioning out of oil and gas, but ultimately, the GEM program was very transformational to me. It exposed me to a world that I didn't even know existed. It exposed me to electric utilities, which are just an enormous field that I was completely unaware of, other than I needed electricity run to my oil pads. And so the GEM program ended up redirecting me to a field that I really had no intention of ever joining. Not that I hated it, it's just that I had a good career in oil and gas. Why would I switch? And I also say that the GEM program, and so college in general, higher learning in general, let me sit in the same room with these other people at renewables, because the renewables and the electric power gen industry, there's just as many sharks in there as there are in oil and gas, and you're going to have to be able to hold your own when you're sitting around the boardroom. You're going to have to have some foundational knowledge. And so higher learning did provide that to me, and then you are going to have to build off of that, what you've learned there, quite a bit. So it's helpful, but it is not necessarily a determining factor.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would agree when it comes to all the different types of paths and stuff for folks. I mean, again, just being the GEM program, that's why we have professional ed, we have free online courses, we have anything. So just trying to meet folks where they are and where they are in their careers, because it does matter. You know, maybe you do need to take that reset break and do a full program, or maybe, you know, you've had some exposure and only need a few courses to kind of help get you over that hump and to set you up for success. So it really just depends there. And then maybe you can speak to, we had some questions about oil and gas transition into electric utilities. I wonder if you could speak a little bit from the power side, maybe just from Schneider's side, of what maybe some good skill set transfers are, just to get people started.
Yeah, in terms of oil and gas into utilities, I think there could be a tremendous number of linkages because so many utilities have centralized, as opposed to deregulated, oil and gas operations. Or I shouldn't say oil, but definitely on the gas side. Don't know too many utilities that, you know, actively moving oil around, but definitely on the natural gas side, buyers, sellers, risk managers, to the extent you really understand the markets and the financial side of gas. I've seen a number of people transition from gas into the electric side because because natural gas is such an important commodity for heating, but also for power generation, that I've seen a lot of folks move from the gas extraction or gas logistics distribution side over to the generation side, or over into the utility sector in terms of understanding how to acquire gas, how to de-risk the acquisition of gas for either for shareholders or for ratepayers, again, depending if you're in a regulated or deregulated market. So those are just some of the immediate linkages that I see in terms of, you know, where somebody in a utility, particularly a regulated utility, would have specific interest in oil and gas personnel. And then on the deregulated side, take Texas or Illinois or someplace like that, where gas and power are very much deregulated, and individual consumers have choice in their retail provider. There again, even if you're not facing, you know, Kaylee, Lee, Mitch, or I trying to sell us, you know, energy when we, you know, buy a house in Texas or something, there's still so much trading and hedging and analysis and risk management that are happening behind the scenes to position those retailers to be in a well risk managed position to be able to offer competitive electric rates. So the broad answer is yes, both on the regulated and deregulated side of the utility world. I could imagine there'd be tremendous opportunity. Having never worked for a utility, I'm maybe not the best position to tell you exactly what those positions are, but having known people who work in the utility space and knowing the way that utilities like to manage risk in different parts of the country, and how, in particular, natural gas feeds into that with their trading desks and their risk management operations and their purchasing functions. There's definitely strong parallels and strong interties between those two industries.
Yeah, Adam, that's a good point. And I was actually just going to drop in the chat for everybody. There's a free online course about utilities. It's really short. It's something we put on. If it's something you're interested into moving the utility space, which has a similar demographic to oil and gas, so something to think about, a great industry to target. They have this similar barbell is what I call it. You have a lot of older generation and some younger folks, but really that middle group where you're looking for those middle managers, there's not that many. There's, you know, they kind of suffered that what would be kind of a big crew change issue in utilities. They had the same demographic and personnel shortage that is there. So it's a great opportunity for folks to be able to jump in and do that if you kind of get schooled up a little bit on what that looks like and what those roles could be. And this will talk to you about, you know, Adam mentioned regulated, deregulated markets. He talked about IOUs versus co-ops, things like that. So this would give you an insight to start to be able to have some of those conversations. So certainly use that as a resource or a tool to do that. Well, just in our last minute, guys, I wanted, we talked about networking a lot, get out there, network and ask questions. I also really want to encourage folks to broaden their scope. So yes, you participate maybe in oil and gas groups, geologist groups, but participate in the larger energy groups as well. I know Kaylee's president of Women's Energy Network. Not everyone on the call is a woman, but we do take men into that group as well if you want to participate and learn. But broaden that scope so you know these companies. Maybe you didn't know of AES before. Maybe you didn't know AMP Energy or Schneider Electric. These are companies you need to get to know, and you'll get to know that by networking through some of these associations. So just wonder, just to wrap us up, if you guys wouldn't mind maybe sharing organizations that you find really useful, both for networking professionally or even personally, so that you can kind of meet some more periphery folks to expand your scope.
Women's Energy Network of Colorado, obviously putting that plug back in there. We're a wonderful place to come show up and learn about the actual industry itself, as well as professional development. We have some nice fun events, usually in person. This year's been different, but we will, for the second half of the year, have those events in person. So please show up. Men and women are welcome, for sure. YPE is another one. The Young Professionals in Energy is great. It's got a nice cross section of young professionals within the full scope of energy. So wonderful place to learn about new companies, meet others, and hopefully kind of expand that personal and professional network of yours.
I would add the SEIA, which is the Solar Energy Industries Association, is an excellent resource for learning. They have a lot of regulatory information available there. They also break down a lot of different facts state by state, which are very good to know. For those who are in Colorado, there's the Colorado Solar and Storage Association, the CSSA, I think. Another good one to meet people. And then one thing that I like to pass on to people, if you've never heard of it, go ahead and Google it and get signed up. There's a free morning email called Solar Wake Up. Excellent digest of all the articles that have been published the day before. And it comes out every morning about 5 o'clock Mountain Time, 5 a.m. Mountain Time. Great way to start off your morning to see the big news that happened yesterday that you missed because you were too busy with all the other stuff. So.
Well, that's great. And Lee, if you wouldn't mind sending that to me, because I'll certainly put all of those in an email wrap up to everybody for all the attendees and stuff. Mitch, did you have one more as well?
I was just going to say, like, alumni networks, whatever alumni network you're in, definitely the GEM Alumni Network. And then on the sort of media front, there's podcasts. Oh my gosh, I'm totally blank. Suncast, The Interchange, and what's the other GTM one with I'm totally blanking now.
Energy Gang.
Yeah, the Energy Gang. And then Axios Generate is another newsletter. But obviously those aren't networking tools, but you can get a lot of ideas flowing from just, you know, listening and reading to that stuff.
Yeah, no, those are great. And like I said, I'll send a wrap up to everybody, and I'll put a couple links in there for that. And then if my panelists are okay sharing contact information, I would put that in there for you guys as well too. So excited to have you guys all as a part of this. Just as a heads up, this is one of a part of series for members in transition. The next members in transition is April 15th from 12 to 1. And that's going to be titled, What is Driving the Energy Transition, Cost, Climate, and Competition by Ken Regelson, who is, I believe, Executive Director of Energy Should Be. So again, please use these as resources, use us as resources, and however much we can help make your transition possible. So thanks everybody for participating. Thanks to my panelists for your time, your resources, and again, for sharing your advice. And hopefully this was useful for everyone on the panel as well. So thanks everybody.
Nice to be with everyone. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.